God. Go too fast. I'm taking 3.
I'm going for the St. Louis now.
Oh, no.
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at a battle I had in my Edinburgh. Yes, the Tier 8 British cruiser. Now, I have been enjoying the British cruiser line. I know we haven't looked at them for a little while now, but for the most part, yeah, I've definitely been enjoying things that I have been seeing under the British, and the Edinburgh is pretty great. I mean, it really starts with the Leander, and then just gets better from there, and I'm very close to the old Neptune. Now, you'll notice as well the little white line there on our HUD. This is the radio detection, and I do run it on my British cruiser. The reason for it is, you know, with these British cruisers, you do tend to get a little closer to the enemies than you normally would. You have pretty good concealment, but the fact that you have the smoke there is really important, or is, you know, really good. And with this, I can always know the direction of the closest enemy ship, especially if it happens to be a sneaky destroyer, because those 9 times out of 10, those are the ships that I'm going to run into. And the better off I am as to knowing where they are, you know, the more I know where they are, the more I know about where they are, the better off I am, is what I'm trying to say. But still, I think it's a pretty good addition to the British cruisers here. So you can see we are on Islands of Ice, and I'm going to move into the southern point here, down here at sea. Now, I do tend to be a little more, maybe not aggressive, but a little more, well, yeah, aggressive right at the beginning in my British cruisers, in that I will take a chance and try to get all the way into a cap, if at all possible. I do see some enemy ships coming down here now towards the sea cap zone, so I'm not too concerned about actually going in there just yet. Because that's another thing you want to be careful about with these British cruisers. You know, you really don't want to be the center of attention of anyone at all. Now, on top of the radio detection here that I have in the British cruiser, I also have the that tier 1 captain ability, priority target, I believe it is. And this I really find is useful as well, because it lets me know how many enemy ships are targeting me, especially if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to figure out when or not to deploy my smoke. It does come pretty much in handy. So we're going to start firing off at an enemy battleship there off in the distance, but I know that I have some enemy ships close, but most of these enemy ships are on the other side of this island here, so I should be pretty safe for now. I am detected, and you'll notice as well that I do have someone targeting me, but it doesn't look as though I have any incoming shots coming, or any incoming shots to worry about at this point. Most likely it's a destroyer in sea that is probably detecting me and probably targeting me, just the destroyer didn't fire at me because, you know, didn't want to give away his own position. So this was a little scary. Here we go. We have an enemy Iowa pop up just out of nowhere, and that right there is an excellent example of the power of a concealment build on a American battleship. You can get your ships in there quite close before they actually end up popping up. And you can see immediately it forces me to stop and throw on the smoke. I have to do this. I do get lucky in that I'm able to avoid these torpedoes that are on the way in. Some of the enemies are still firing at me, you know, just randomly in the smoke. This can be pretty effective, especially for, you know, when you do come across British cruisers, because it takes time for these British cruisers to come to a stop. And, you know, if you do fire at the last spot you see them, much like we're doing now, the enemies are doing now to me, you know, you might end up hitting me and doing a bit of damage, so keep that in mind. Anyway, I'm going to get my position, or sorry, my ship positioned to kind of get out of this situation if I need to, right? Taking a look at what targets I have out there in front of me so I can get some torpedoes off. I've got some 3 torpedoes, 8 kilometers range. It's not too bad, but I do like the single fire ability. I mean, because, you know, you're going to get all 3 hits if the first one hits and all 3 of them are going to hit, which is always pretty nice and always good for the old damage numbers, as well as we'll shortly see here in this battle. But anyway, we do have an enemy Tirpitz there off in the distance. Want to be careful with the player, and we'll notice that the player does have that special camo that was most likely from the Santa convoys, right? I believe that that does a buff to detectability, which is quite dangerous for the turrets. But anyway, we do get 3 torpedo hits on the enemy turrets, and we do end up doing a bit of damage, which is not too bad at all. So we're just going to try and continue to follow it up. Important to note with your British cruisers, especially when you're fighting against these battleships like this, is if you do hit the superstructure of the enemy battleship, that is generally a better call than trying to bust through the armor along the sides, because you'll usually do more damage. The German battleships can be a little difficult though because of the turtleback armor of the turrets themselves, but if you keep with it, you should start racking up some pretty quick damage. So there we go. We have an enemy York over there off in the distance. We're going to try and do something about the player, but now I have some torpedoes to deal with, so we are going to try and avoid these torpedoes as best we can. And there we go. Little close, but we do manage to avoid them, thank God, because you know we have our repair and it's on cooldown right now. Now unfortunately I do take some shots there from an enemy ship, and now I'm on fire, and there's nothing I can do about putting out that fire. So instead I'm going to just let it burn, hit my old repair party, and hopefully I'm just going to repair through the fire, and that'll help conserve as much hit points as I possibly can. We're going to move to the north, right? I'm going to try and get away from sea, because if we look at the minimap, we do see that the majority of my allied ships are at A and B rather than C. So yeah, I need to get out of C here, and I need to get into B and start helping out my allies up here. And luckily we do have an enemy destroyer here on our port side. Now I say luckily because the Edinburgh and most British, well, all British cruisers are really good at taking down enemy destroyers. They can do some pretty fine work to the enemy destroyers pretty quickly indeed, just as long as the enemy destroyer stays detected, obviously. So now we have an enemy North Carolina, I believe, to deal with, and the enemy North Carolina is going to go broadside to us. Now, our allies finished the player off pretty quickly, but had the player survived, we would have done a whole bunch of damage to that enemy North Carolina. You know, with the player being broadside and so close to us, our AP shells here on the British cruisers would just rip through that player. So we have an enemy battleship there off in the distance that we're going to start putting some shots into, but we are looking around the minimap as well, right? Just to take a look to see what other ships we might have around and what other things we might need to take into consideration. So the majority of the enemy ships are usually, or well, right now anyway, probably down there at the C zone, C cap zone. So it's fair to say that the majority of them are probably in the south of the map. So I'm in a pretty good position. The only concern I suppose that I have is that I am, you know, pretty much out front, so I do want to be careful. Now we do have some enemy torpedoes coming in, so we are going to need to get out of our smoke and just get out of this whole situation. Can't stay in the smoke, and it is something you do want to remember. Your smoke is a torpedo magnet. Enemies will torp the smoke. It's just what they do. I do it all the time, and enemies do it to me all the time, so you always have to be prepared to leave the smoke as quickly as you possibly can. Now we do have an enemy destroyer with us still in B, but we do have a lot of allies coming into B now as well who are going to start helping us out. Now we can see that we have begun capping the B point once again, so we know the enemy destroyer is gone now, which is decent because now we are finally able to get the second cap zone secured. Taking a look around, checking to see what we have here. We do have an enemy battleship over there off in a reverse. You can see, I mean, again, I'm detected and people are targeting me, but I'm doing a pretty good job of being able to avoid it. And besides, the targets that are targeting me are pretty far away right now, so I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to avoid any incoming fire. We can see the enemy battleship there fires at me. I'm getting lucky. I'm not really avoiding the incoming fire. It's a more matter of getting lucky, but still, I'm about to move behind this this massive mountain here, or iceberg, so this should provide me some cover there from that enemy battleship, and I can get a little closer to this enemy ship and maybe get some more torpedoes off, because that's something I do definitely try to do all the time in my British cruisers, is make use of the torpedoes, because again, I do generally find that I'm closer in with these British cruisers, and I'm making use of maneuverability and smoke more often than not. And with 8-kilometer torpedoes, I mean, they're not totally offensive, but they do definitely open up opportunities for you to use them, and you know, take advantage of situations where you can ambush enemies really, really nicely. So we do see the enemy destroyer over there. Once again, I'm going to put a few shots into the player, but you can see it's mostly lackluster. Most of my shots do end up missing. They've taken my engines out, so I'm going to have to repair all of this damage. And luckily for myself, though, I am just managing to stay inside the smoke. No, it looks like I'm going to, yeah, there we go. It's always tragic when that happens, I find, but again, luckily, you know, I'm back into the smoke. People don't see me. Well, I'll be back in quickly. People won't see me, and it'll be all right. Now, it's not as bad as when you're sailing along and well, the first time I used the British smoke, sail along at top speed, pop it, and try and slow down. No, that was awful. Generally, 13 to 12 knots, somewhere in about there. I have done it at some faster speeds, like 15 knots before, but sometimes it's a toss-up, it seems, at those speeds, because sometimes I get one puff of smoke and other times I don't, and when I don't, it, you know, screws me over. So I don't know, I've been trying to do it a little slower now, about 13 knots or so. Anyway, we do manage to take down that enemy ship, which is pretty decent. We're at about 115,000 damage, which is not too bad at all. We're pretty low on health, though, overall, so we are going to have to try and play it a little careful. We have an enemy New Orleans there off in the distance that we are, well, at least I'm pretty concerned about. If that player fires HE or AP at me, it's going to do a pretty decent amount of damage. I'm not spotted right now, so I'm not too concerned about, you know, getting out of this area just yet. I'm just kind of assessing the situation and seeing what I can do and where I can go. And that's generally how I find the British cruisers play. You know, it's not you're not going to be leading any sort of charge or anything. You kind of just sneak your way in, pop your smoke, and hunker down and dish out damage. Let people push up, and then you sort of push up, you know, move in once they've pushed up a bit, which makes the Edinburgh, I guess, interesting, because competitive play anyway is usually at tier 8, and it'll be interesting to see if there is a place for a British cruiser in competitive play. I don't know. I don't think I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. Just because you have a Kutov, which can do a whole lot more than this thing can, I suppose. But yeah, maybe. Anyway, for the most part, the enemies aren't really putting up too much of a fight, which is pretty good. We've been able to hold on to B, and I've really just stayed down here to the south of B and inside B as well for the most of the battle here, just kind of circling around, dishing out damage where I can. And it's pretty important too with, well, it almost plays like a destroyer in the sense, you know, sometimes targets are within your range, but you really have to think, you know, do I want to fire just yet and let the player know where I am, or do I want to continue along? And that's pretty much what I did with this enemy battleship. Was I allowed myself, the enemy Iowa here, I allowed myself to come to a stop so I can pop my smoke before I ended up firing. And in addition to this, I wanted to let the player get a little closer to me so I could potentially launch off some torpedoes, which is what I'm going to hope to do here shortly. You can see my shots are going into the enemy battleship, not doing too bad. I mean, you can expect about 1,000 damage per salvo, I guess, roughly, unless your shots start doing or are landing really efficiently, and then you can really start racking up the damage. And being so close to the Neptune, I'm very excited to to start seeing some of this happen. We can see is kind of taking place on the enemy Iowa here, but again, I'm going to try and get torpedoes off, and that's what I'm counting on to do the most of the damage to this enemy player here and get this player gone. If this player was a Missouri, the option here of smoking and doing what I'm doing right now, just sort of sitting in the smoke and shooting at him, it wouldn't have existed to me, and it would have just resulted in my death. So I was quite happy to see that this was an enemy Iowa and not a Missouri. With the radar on the Missouri, it makes it very, very mean. But anyway, we launch off our torpedoes. We can see my allies now as well are helping me out with this enemy Iowa, which is pretty great. Hopefully the torpedoes are going to go in and do a bit of damage, but it looks like, yeah, there we go. Enemy Iowa is gone. We managed to finish him off. Meh, whatever. At least someone got the kill, and at least he's dead. That's the main point anyway. So we still have the 2 cap zones, which is great. We're at about 950 cap points now, which isn't too bad. And we're sitting on about 7,000 damage in the Edinburgh, which is also not too bad at all. Like I say, I've been really enjoying the Edinburgh. Now, definitely I am going to be keeping her. There's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, once I do get the Neptune, I'll start running the normal camo on her. I have been running Ocean Soul on her since I got her. It was before Christmas, I think, when I got her. But it's, you know, just letting me get through the ship a little faster, I suppose, because I am excited to get to the Neptune and as well the Minotaur, because, you know, there's bound to be new ships on the horizon, and I want to make sure I'm ready for them. There we go, the enemy New Orleans is gone. We don't need to worry about this player anymore. There were only 3 enemy ships remaining, and I figure I'd maybe turn towards the south, cap the sea point, but also, again, with radio detection, I know that the enemies are down there in the south, right? At least the closest enemy ship to me is down there in the south. Now, if we look at the minimap, we do see some of the enemy ships pop up, but yeah, it's all too late. We win. Fantastic, and not a bad game in the old Edinburgh. Now, of course, the team was there and made it possible, so always want to make sure we thank those people. But you can see we do end up walking away with about 137,000 damage dealt, 9,100 experience. We get an Dreadnought, which is not too bad, 379,000 credits earned. The torpedoes resulted in a lot of that damage too, but just a steady fire of that armor-piercing raining down on people really does pay off at times as well. I did finish top of the team overall. We can see how some of the damage is broken down amongst the enemy ships. Again, with the majority being dealt, I think it was the Tirpitz that ate all those torpedoes. We do end up walking away with 247,000 credits, which is not too bad at all, and the nice 9,100 experience, which is obviously going to go towards the Neptune. I think I'm only like 30,000 experience away. I basically just need one more victory, then I'm just probably going to use my free experience to get the Neptune. Well, yeah, that and credits. I suppose I need the credits to buy her, but whatever. Anyway, folks, that is today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to leave any comments you have for me in the video section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Remember to hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.